Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 6, Episode 13. I'm John DiCarlo. Sam Newman and Sam Cohn are with me again, as always. No Kyle Gauss this week. Kyle's busy, so we will miss his wit and humor this week. But we have the indispensable Sam's with us. We have a lot for you this week. We have some basketball talk, an exclusive interview a little bit later on with Brendan Barry, the transfer from Dartmouth that finally came together for Temple. A lot of you might recall Sam Newman. Did you guys both talk to him last spring?
I talked to him back in March.
That's right. So you might recall that Brendan Barry was very, very close to committing to Temple out of Dartmouth as a grad transfer, elected to stay at Dartmouth. But as you've probably read, hopefully you've read in Sam's coverage, both Sams did a story on him. I think the Ivy League deciding to cancel his season might have been the clincher there. So Temple's getting a really good shooter, one of the best three-point shooters in the entire country. He'll be playing for the Owls this season. We were able to talk to him. We'll have that exclusive interview for you later on the podcast, along with some mailbag questions that he was kind enough to answer for our listeners and for our readers. We've got a lot of football to get into, some Thanksgiving takes as well. So this will be our final podcast before the Thanksgiving holiday. So a lot to be thankful for, but I'm sure we're probably all looking forward to shoving 2020 out the door pretty soon. We're not there yet, but getting closer. So guys, I'm delayed in getting started here because we had a bird in our house. That was really fun. I was about to send you guys the Zoom link to start recording, and all of a sudden my wife started screaming, which I was just telling you guys before we start recording. She's great. I love her. She's pretty tough, but she gets weirded out by bugs, and I thought maybe there was a spider in the house. So I'm up in the upstairs here in the attic. We have a finished attic where my office is, and she starts screaming and screaming. I thought, what is going on? She's like, there's a bird in the house. It came through the chimney. The flue was open. So I suppose it's my fault because we've been using the fireplace.
Isn't it always?
Yeah, it is. It's always, I know it sounds like such an old guy thing to say, but yeah, just, when you guys settle down, eventually become married Sams or committed Sams. Just learn that. It's always going to be your fault. That sounds so cliche, but anyway, she starts screaming. I was like, what the hell is going on? She's like, there's a bird in the house. And you guys are probably too young to remember. Did you ever see The Great Outdoors with John Candy, Dan Aykroyd?
I've seen it a couple times, but I was younger, so I can't tell you my piece.
Terrific movie. There was a bat in their lake house there, so not the same thing. I'm glad we didn't have a bat in the house, but yes, it came in through the chimney. It was covered in ashes and soot, like Santa Claus, and 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, except he was not wearing a red suit. So he comes in, he's flying around our kitchen. My dog Sam is moseying around. Maybe we'll make him the third honorary Sam in the podcast. Just like nothing's going on. I'm like, buddy, get out of the way. There's a bird in the house. My wife runs upstairs and got it out of the living room. And then it was in, like, we have this enclosed front porch. I'm talking to it, referring to it as buddy. I'm like, buddy, come on, get out of here. We have a couple of neighbors walking by. They probably think I'm just completely certifiably insane. And took about 10 minutes to get him out of the house. He finally got out. My wife, in the meantime, was behind the front door, behind the glass, taking video of this. Now she's laughing. She thinks it's great. She's like, he's nestled in your shoe. This is great. So that's why we're running late.
Getting flying animals out of a house is the biggest pain in the behind ever. When I was probably like 15, or maybe like 16, I don't know. My brother wasn't home. My mom wasn't home. It was just me and my dad for whatever reason. And we came home from like the grocery store, brought in the groceries. The garage is open and the door to get in the house is open. And we were like going back and forth to bring things, left the door open, and a bat flies in over my head.
Oh, no.
I was flying in circles around the house, and my dad had to take care of it. Then again, my senior year of high school, it was just my mom home and then me and a couple of my friends, and a bat flew in the house again. Me and my one buddy are like getting things to try to hit it or like shoo it out the door. It's just such a pain.
Did you have to kill it, or did it get out of the house?
our first instinct, the more recent one, our first instinct was he was going to try to get the bat to come towards me, and I was just going to take a chair and try to hit it, or like
WWF
Ginobili it, but with a chair almost. But we eventually got them both out of the house, and I don't think either.
I love the Manu Ginobili reference there.
My dad went with a smarter technique to trap it and then let it go, like trap it in like a box on the ground and then slide something under it and then take it out of the house. We were just like full on, just try to beat the crap out of it.
Oh, and Sam Newman, you have a bird story too.
Yeah. Back when I was in elementary school, I used to have to take care of myself in the morning because my mom worked pretty early hours at high school, and my dad was working in Atlanta at the time. So I think I missed the bus this morning or something like that. So I had to go over to my neighbor to ask if they could drive me to school, and I ended up leaving like my front door open and not realizing it. Like it wasn't closed all the way, and it was a windy day, so the kind of blew out. Maybe it was the back door, because I mean your front door being wide open, it's not ideal. I think it was the back door, and yeah, so I came home and there's a bird flying around the house. So I was home alone at the time, so I had to get my neighbor again, and he came over with like some gardening gloves and grabbed it, grabbed it and threw it, and then it just kind of flew away. So
yeah, hopefully this bird, wherever it is, has gone to a better life, and maybe flew over to nearby Cobbs Creek and washed himself off and is on to his next chapter, because he was pretty he was covered up. He
didn't want to stick around and talk about Temple football and basketball.
That would be, how about that? How many listeners would we get from this week to next week if we had a talking bird on the podcast? Would anybody believe us?
I feel like enough people would not believe us. They would choose to not listen to the podcast, and then our ratings would plummet, because they think then they would think we're certifiably insane.
Yeah, they'd be like, those guys are really slipping.
We thought they were weird. They just got a lot weirder.
They just need to get to the Thanksgiving.
2020 really getting into us, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, no talking bird on the podcast. Grateful to have him out of the house. Hope he's on and living his best life. So again, we're going to get into some football here. The Brendan Barry interview we'll have for you coming up. This Temple football team is now 1-5 with 2 games left, this being the most winnable of the two, although I don't think Temple can take anything for granted now. They're playing a 1-6 ECU team. We know young guys have been getting their shot. If you read Sam have collaborated on our 2 notebook pieces this week on Monday and Tuesday. Monday is Rod Carey's media availability. Tuesday, we get some players. So we talked to Rod Carey on Monday as usual. And then on Tuesday, Kamir Brown, Kobe Wilson, and Wisdom Quarshie were available, right, guys?
Alex Odom as well.
Alex Odom. So, I mean, if there's anything that Temple can hope to get out of this just tough season, I don't know how else you could refer to it, that started off with some promise in the sense that they, certainly wasn't ideal that they had to start in October, but they had a lot of extra practice time. And at the time it seems like eons ago that they were healthy. Now they're not healthy. Anthony Russo did not play again. In case you missed it, he was in COVID protocol last Saturday in the 38-13 loss to UCF. Anthony Russo will not be playing this week. Real Mitchell got his first start, did not go well for him. 2 early turnovers. Rod Carey, in a pretty transparent move, we're talking to him on Monday, and all of us as reporters got a lot of questions in, and then Rod drops on us, hey guys, wanted to let you know, since I talked to you guys in the beginning of the week and it want anything to come out later in the week, Real Mitchell out for the year. Matt Duncan is going to get the start on Saturday. We're like, whoa, okay. I got to give Rod credit. A lot of coaches would not disclose that, at least from a strategic advantage, if anything else. So now a true freshman quarterback, and you saw 2 series with Matt Duncan on Saturday. The true freshman quarterback out of South Carolina is going to get the start. Another true freshman, Kamal Gray, is going to be backing him up. So they are really, really up against it. Trav Betty's still out. They have not specified what his injury is. It looks like he took a knee to the head. Again, Anthony Russo is still out COVID protocol. We don't know the specifics of Real Mitchell's injury, but here we are with again, Matt Duncan heading into the game Saturday, getting his first career start. So we've got that to look at. We didn't do an instant analysis of last Saturday's loss, but again, a lot to pick apart there. But we don't want to spend too much time reviewing last Saturday's game, but if we touch on it for just a second, I wrote about this last Saturday. I think it is fair to wonder if it might have been a winnable game because the defense obviously got put in a bad position. 2 early turnovers by Mitchell where he had the ball taken away from him, then through the interception. Temple shuts down UCF in the second quarter, but they just couldn't get anything going offensively. So the pieces aren't there on offense. And I think now as a Temple fan base, a lot of fans have picked apart Anthony Russo for the interceptions he throws with just cause, but you can see there's a clear drop off between Russo and the rest of the guys. It's not to say that Trad and Raul Mitchell or maybe even Matt Duncan at some point might not develop into good quarterbacks, but there's a clear drop off there. The defense really kind of buckled down in the second quarter, but couldn't do it all on their own. And then some younger guys got some carries. Again, before we move on and look at ECU and give our listeners some audio here from the week, what stood out to you guys from the loss on Saturday?
I would just have to say the running back room, just because the offensive line had a lot of moving parts. I mean, you saw Wisdom Corshi, playing right guard as a first collegiate game. David Wagugu started at right tackle. So you were without, Joseph Hooper and Adam Klein were like rotating in and out, but they were on the sideline for most of the game. Michael Neese was out. They had a lot of moving parts. So for the running backs to be able to run like they did, Tavon Ruley, the stat sheet doesn't show it. He had 3.8 yards per carry, but he ran hard and he had some tough runs where it was hard to bring him down. I think he had 90 yards on like 23 carries, and he ran particularly hard. Then you saw some flashes from Dobbins and Sadie. They broke off some. I think they broke off like Sadie maybe broke off like a 13-yard run. Dobbins broke off like a 16-yard run or something. So they showed their flashes. Dobbins obviously showed why he's a home run hitter. And then you had Onassis Neely, who scored his first career touchdown. So I think you have a lot to, as I like to say this a lot to hang your hat on in the backfield. I think they played particularly well, the running backs. And then I think another thing that you can positive is just that, you have contributors on defense in Kobe Wilson and Alex Odom. Yeah, Alex Odom talked about how he missed 4 tackles, but nobody was particularly tackling well in defense. So I feel like the effort that both of them have been putting forth is impressive, especially how they've kind of been thrown into the fire, especially Kobe Wilson, who got 1 day of practice and then was like, yep, you're starting their SMU. So I feel like the way that they've handled their situations is very well, and as well as the running back room with Ray Davis, opting out and entering the transfer portal at like the snap of a finger.
Sammy kind of hinted at what I was going to get at, was just like on the defensive side of the ball. They held UCF scoreless in the second quarter. They played well in stretches, but John, as you had mentioned a minute ago, they were put in some pretty unadvantageous field position after Raul Mitchell's 2 turnovers early were pretty costly. And then you look to the second half and they did play well in pockets, but it's tough when UCF takes a lead like that to keep the momentum and to kind of turn things around at that point. Like it got to a point where it was just too much to handle, and UCF kept running it down their throats. But I think one positive is the way that although Temple's defense did not play well in the first quarter, based on kind of the position they were put in, they responded well in the second quarter. Just something to, as Sam would say, hang your hat on.
Another interesting thing too, and I realized that for the running backs here, I think there is something to be encouraged by with Tavon Ruley, 90 yards on 23 carries, did have an 18-yarder. Again, got the bulk of the work, averaged a shade under, 4 yards a carry, which is nothing dynamic, but I think he's starting to quite literally and figuratively find his legs under him. It is interesting that they keep describing, both Gabe Infante preseason and now Rod Carey describing Kyle Dobbins as the most dynamic back that they have. Again, he had 4 carries, 34 yards. He did have that 1 second quarter carry where he fumbled it and recovered his own fumble. So it shows you that they did want to go to him early. And then he got his other 3 carries, I believe, in the fourth quarter, had a 16-yard run. Sadie broke off a 14-yard run. He finished with 6 carries for 31 yards. Onassis Neely scored his first career touchdown late in the game. Again, some of this came against some backups. Matt Duncan, who we'll talk a little bit more about here in a second, did break off an 8-yard run to get a first down, so he can scramble a little bit. So, in terms of planning for the future, you're going to continue to see over these next couple of weeks what you can get out of some of these younger guys. As Sam mentioned, Alex Odom, I don't know if he played particularly well. Again, he self-scouted himself and said he missed 4 tackles. There was one on a big gain that I remember where he kind of got faked out a little bit, but these are the guys, Alex Odom, Trey Blair, MJ Griffin, the guys that you're going to need in the secondary in the future, because I mean, Jalen Ware has another year of eligibility. Well, I guess everybody has an extra year of eligibility depending on how things shake out after this year, but Jalen Ware has
So you might have two.
Yeah, Jalen Ware has struggled. It's clear to say that he struggled. Tavon Ruley could come back for another year, but you're seeing some positives out of the young backs. We mentioned Wisdom Quarshi playing at right guard. Rod Carey had said that he was pretty pleased with the way David Wagugu played. Wisdom, who I think you can tell they think very highly of him, but yeah, he struggled playing right guard, but it sounds like the biggest cliche. I mean, football, certainly in Temple's case, Temple's definitely a developmental program. They're not Alabama. They're not LSU. They're not Clemson. They don't just automatically reload with 8 5-star recruits, 10 4-star recruits, and then they're ready to roll. These guys do develop, and it's going to go in one of two different ways. And, but a lot of these guys are taking their lumps right now. It's hard to judge during a COVID season, but if there's anything to take out of it, it's maybe that the defense did, buckle down the second quarter. Then you started seeing some flashes from some of the younger guys, but nonetheless, Temple's 1-5 facing a 1-6 ECU team, which again doesn't have a great record, but they've played some other teams that Temple has played here. They have some common opponents, and they've played them a little tougher, including Tulane. They've played Tulsa tough. One of the other things that came out of this week, and we'll play audio in a second, was Rod Carey talking on Monday about he said, if it were up to me, and I'm paraphrasing here, we would not have wanted to play these last 3 weeks due to just being banged up with injuries and the COVID-related absences. So, again, fans may not give a damn about this. I think as reporters, we respect him. He's always pretty straightforward and genuine with us. I give him a lot of credit for saying that. Now, you guys wrote about it this week. Rod said the powers that be didn't agree with me. Sam, you followed up with the Temple spokesperson, and that spokesperson told you that that Rod has Temple's full support on that. It would seem that he was talking a little bit more about the conference, and then the conference says ultimately it's up to Temple as to whether or not they want to play. But I think it took a lot for Rod to say that, because I know that he really wanted to get this season underway. These coaches, that's their livelihood. They did not want to take a season off. But again, one of the biggest stories for them is that they went from being a largely healthy team in August and September to being just so beat up. And again, would they have won if Anthony Russo played, if they had been a little bit more healthy? I don't know. UCF's still a pretty good football team. I think it would have been a lot more competitive, but I thought that was a lot for Rod to say. And then again, he dropped the Matt Duncan news on us. We're going to play this clip here for you now. This is Rod talking. He was answering, I believe, a question from Mark Narducci from the Philadelphia Inquirer. And here's Rod talking about, again, being as honest as he could be about his concerns about, not wanting to play over these past 3 weeks. You'll hear him say, hey, we want these young men to play. We want them to have an opportunity, but there are risks involved with that. So here's Rod Carey from Monday talking about that subject.
My opinion has been for the last 3 weeks that we've been at that critical mass. People that make those decisions have not been in agreement with me. And so, I think that's been reviewed each week, and they have not agreed with me on that. But, it's after talking with our doctor, too. I mean, he agrees with me that, COVID has another effect, which we're now seeing, and we're certainly in there, is there are a lot more injuries because of the people who are playing and the amount they're playing and what have you. So that's
all right. Yeah, I think Rod saying that is kind of huge. I mean, obviously you've seen cancellations across the American. I believe there's 2 games that are canceled this week.
Yeah.
And for a head coach to say that he actively believes that his team shouldn't have played the previous 3 weeks is kind of huge. And it's not something that he kind of just threw there and expected like a headline to kind of like be buried within the headline. It was being honest about, their prospects of playing and not being healthy enough, whether it was COVID or injury wise. And I mean, you've seen in the field, they've been competitive too, which is, I think you have to give credit to the coaching staff. And I know fans don't want to hear, the moral victories that come with this. And also at the same time, you have to look at that, how many scholarship players are missing. They traveled. I mean, there's been kind of discrepancies on that, but Temple has said they traveled to UCF with 45 scholarship players. I mean,
yeah, Vinny James clarified on Monday's call that they considered that they had 45 scholarship players that were available to play, and that's why we've reported it as such. So sorry, Sam, go ahead there. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, all good. And I mean, I think obviously you've seen teams cancel for less, whether it's other programs within other conferences. So I think we have to give Temple the benefit of the doubt here, as much as it might hurt to do, and look at this season for what it is. And it's a tough season for what they're going through. And I just don't think many college football teams could be going through what they are and be in the position to be playing games, especially with all the losses and they have, and the fact that they're on their fourth quarterback. And just to wrap up here, I mean, like, you can say what you want about Rod. We've obviously, said what we have about him, but at the end of the day, like, you have to commend him for being as honest and straightforward about this as he has been.
Another noteworthy thing that he said on Monday that kind of amended his point about him not feeling like they should have played the last 3 weeks was him saying, and granted, Temple has gotten their butts kicked the last couple of weeks, and although they've been in games in the first half for the most part, the games have gotten away from them in the second half due to just the lack of players they have and the lack of legs they have. And Rod amended what he was saying by, like, the reason I don't want to play, or I don't think we should play, has nothing to do with competition. I would love to go out there and play. I think we can hang with these teams. I think we can hang with some of the better teams in the conference. It's more about safety, and it's more about just the fact that they don't want to make things worse. They already have a handful of guys in the COVID protocol. They already have guys who are getting injured based on the lack of live game reps they were getting. He doesn't want to make things worse by playing another game.
Yeah, and you look at what Kobe Wilson did, and again, they lost 38-13. It is what it is. A loss is a loss any way you slice it. A guy like Kobe Wilson, who gets less than a week of practice time, and they're really high on him. He was a former Memphis commit, had a Georgia offer, at least on paper, and now we're seeing a little bit beyond paper because he's playing. You can see him move around. He looks like a player. Obviously has a lot to learn, but he had a pass deflection in the game last Saturday. Again, Rod said it again this week. They're really high on him. I mean, imagine him. We know this from talking to football players, from covering the sport. You can't just pick up all the time and just say, oh, I haven't practiced for a week, and just get right back out there and think that everything's going to come back and that your muscles are going to snap back into shape. There is risk involved there. You can pull a hamstring, you can pull a calf muscle, you can tear an ACL, and it does get dangerous. And as a coach, head coaches talk to parents throughout the week sometimes, and they're ultimately responsible to their players. They're ultimately responsible to their family sometimes. And I'm not saying that Rod is getting calls from parents all the time, but I'm sure he's nervous. Like, geez, this kid's a true freshman. He didn't get a chance to practice all week, but we need him because we're down Isaiah Graham Mobley. We're down all the Isaacs, in the secondary, you're down, Freddie Johnson and guys like that. They're in a bit of a tough bind right now, but Kobe Wilson goes out there, plays well. We'll see more of him this week, I'm sure. But just again, they went from 0 to 60 in the wrong direction with injuries and COVID related stuff. And it's caught up with so many people. I've actually talked to a couple of NFL people this week, and both of them have said the same thing, which is it's virtually impossible to fairly judge any college program right now this season, just based off of what people are going through. I'm sure Temple fans not liking Penn State, I'm sure they're rejoicing in what Penn State's going through right now. Is James Franklin and Penn State football program, are they as bad as they are right now? Probably not, but they're winless right now. It's insane. I mean, it's just been a weird season. Temple's really going through it right now, but the injuries are a concern. Again, I mean, we contemplated, if you're Temple, what if Matt Duncan can't go this week? We're recording this on a Wednesday, and we're going to record this throughout the duration of next several hours here. We've got a couple of pieces of this podcast to put together, but not saying anything is going to happen. But, what if something were to happen to Matt Duncan? Kamal Gray's got to play. Who's your emergency quarterback after that? Brandon Mack, who played some high school quarterback in high school, Cheltenham High School. It's getting thin. And again, we mentioned that there were two other games that were postponed this week in the American: Houston at SMU and Navy at USF. Those games have been postponed. So it is a thing that's happening, but a lot there from Rod to come out and say, I didn't want to play these games, and just being honest.
I think it says a lot that he said that he thought his team's safety was in question the past 3 weeks, and the conference was basically like and there was kind of like he said, she said about that. I mean, if the head coach thinks that his team's safety is in question over the past 3 weeks and they still have to play, like, I don't really know what we're doing here, you know?
Yeah. Another thing that Rod talked about this week, another thing that we had mentioned earlier in the podcast was you guys being able to talk to, well, actually, we'll play this clip first from Rod Carey talking about David Ngugu and Wisdom Quarshie again. David playing right tackle. Another developmental guy that, again, if you listen to the coaches talk about him, they've been pretty high on him. Came in with under Jeff Collins' staff from DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. Again, just a guy that they deemed to be pretty athletic, pretty raw, that they could build up. He's put on 65, 70 pounds, something like that, since getting to Temple. Now on the offensive line, again, he got the start at right tackle. And then when things started getting shifted around with Joseph Hooper getting banged up, Wisdom Quarshie, who might ultimately be Temple's future center, he gets thrown in there at right guard. If you're watching the game, you're rewinding stuff, you can see particularly, I think it might be fair to say that the Quarshie struggled a little bit more than Ngugu there. But you'll hear Rod Carey here talking about how those guys played and his assessment of them, and then we'll talk to you on the other side of this.
Yeah, I think David played well for being his first start. You know, he's played sparingly at different times, of course, of this year and last year. Really a natural tackle. We've had him playing guards at other times out of necessity, but was pretty happy with the way David played. Wiz, you know, he got thrown into the fire there, and I certainly believe that Wiz is going to be a really good player for us. You know, he just probably wasn't ready for the live bullets the way that they were coming at him. But there were some positives in there from him, too. Big, strong kid that I think has a bright future.
In addition to talking about those guys, Kamir Brown was made available to reporters this week. He's an interesting story in that he has now, I guess he was recruited by Matt Rule's staff. He has been on the team for a while now. We did a couple weeks ago mention that he had opted out, and then we saw him back on the field, kind of wondered what was going on. He filled in the gaps this week and let reporters know that, yes, he did leave the team and decided to come back. He was out for a week. You guys have written about this. You guys want to talk a little bit about that before we play some audio from him?
Yeah, so I mean, we had mentioned a minute ago how candid Rod was on Monday. Rod Carey was on Monday. I think Kamir Brown is another guy that was interesting to hear how open and honest he was, kind of about, you know, what's been going on in both this season, about returning from injury. So we're gonna hear, you know, hearing him talk a little bit about how he had to opt out, or he felt like he was in a position where it made the most sense to opt out and then take that week off against Tulane and then opt back in. It was interesting to just hear kind of him be so honest and open about like the situation he was in and talking to the coaches about what happened.
I was just, honestly, I was frustrated at my playing time because I felt as though, like you said, like I was one of the older guys, and I felt like I was ready to play. But my coaches, I feel as though they saw that that I still was carrying things from my injury, like maybe limping a few or something. But I felt as though I was good, so like I just took a leave from the team for that week just to focus and get myself back together, because it was just a bunch of stuff happening at one time. And so I asked Coach, could I just depart from the team for a week just to get myself together and just try to refocus on things that were happening. And he said, yeah. And then the week went by, and I spoke with the coach, and he let the team know, and everyone, they were happy to have me back, and I was welcomed back.
All right, so there you heard from Kamir Brown. Again, he came in with Temple's 2016 class out of Penns Grove High School down in South Jersey, has seen himself now through into his third staff, was out last year, missed the entire season with an ACL injury, thought he might have been a contributor this year. There you hear him talking about how he'd hoped to get more playing time, left the team, came back, with Linwood Crump likely out this week, Freddie Johnson day-to-day. Possibility that Brown could be your starter opposite Christian Braswell there. Again, that secondary has just been paper thin. And at safety, again, we talked about some of the younger guys who have had to play there. They're going to get tested by an ECU team that, again, is 1-6, but they have some weapons, right? This is an ECU team that's 1-6. They're 1-5 in the conference. They had games that were supposed to be played that were postponed against Marshall, South Carolina, Norfolk State. They lost 51-28. I'm just going through a couple of common opponents here. Earlier in the season, back on September 26th, they lost 51-28 to UCF. They beat USF, were a little bit more competitive, and beat USF more decidedly 44-24 back on October 10th. Lost 27-23 to Navy. Lost 30-24 to what is now a ranked Tulsa team. Then lost 38-21 to Tulane. Got routed by Cincinnati last Friday, 55-17. So, they've struggled, but they've got some playmakers here. Holton Ayers, their quarterback, a guy that Temple still has to be mindful of. I guess I hate saying a normal year, but in a more normal season, I think this is a more winnable game for Temple. Again, it would very clearly be with Cincinnati on the horizon after Thanksgiving. That's going to be a really, really tough game. But this is Temple's last chance at a win here. But it's not a gimme. I mean, what do you see when you look at ECU here? Again, Holton Ayers, a quarterback that they did play last year, he's thrown for 12 touchdowns, 8 picks. He's completed better than 60% of his passes for 1,441 yards. I mean, off the top of your head, again, we're not getting the predictions here yet, but how can we even get a read on this game? There's so much to get into. Matt Duncan starting. You don't know who ultimately is going to be available on defense. We have a pretty good idea. You look at the younger players that are going to get tested here. What do you look at? What comes to your mind when you think of this game against ECU? I mean, is this a winnable game for Temple? Do you think it's something that they pull out, given all the factors that we're looking at here?
Yeah, I think it's winnable. I mean, granted, they've been in every game they had this season. It just hasn't. The wheels have just seemed to fall off in the second half when, their depth gets tested. So, I think what they should do with Duncan, and obviously I'm not Mike Ramovich or Rod Carey or Greg Harmon in game planning, but obviously you got to make it easy on a young quarterback. I mean, like let's just compare it to like an NFL rookie where you want to run the football to get the pass going, and then get the ball to your playmakers. I feel like Temple hasn't done a good job of getting the ball to Brandon Mack. They haven't done a good job of getting the ball to David Martin Robinson lately. And they've done a good job of getting the ball to Jaden Blue, but you have, and then if you want to add Jose Barbone in the mix, you got 4 capable guys who you can definitely get the ball to, and they all can proven that they can get open and be playmakers. And then we talked about running backs earlier. If they can get that running game going, that should be able to help Duncan, flow a little bit easier. And then just the other side of the football, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about what ECU kind of has to offer. Something that we didn't mention about the defense is I feel like their pass rushing off the edge has been much better than we would have expected. The overall play of the defensive line has left a lot to be desired. I think Ifan Maja and Dan Archibald have frankly not been good this year. I don't think I'm miss saying that, but I think Arnold Ebiketie and Manny Walker have been everything that Temple could have hoped for them to be and more. So if they're able to, get after the quarterback and maybe get off the field early like they were their UCF, they did a nice job of doing that in the second quarter and the second half. I think they have a chance of winning.
Sam, to your point, remember after the Navy game week 1 when Anthony Russo gave praise to Mike Ramovich for feeling like he did a good job play calling wise of making him feel comfortable in the game and having a good sense of how to get his quarterback to ease his way into a first start of the season for Anthony Russo by having quick slant passes and short passes, keeping the ball on the ground and just kind of getting him into the flow of things. I think we haven't seen any of Matt Duncan, but B, you kind of have to do something similar. And I think if they put the ball on the ground the entire game, I don't think there's a way they win this game. You're gonna have to at least test Matt Duncan's arm strength and at least test him putting the ball in the air and test his decision making. But I think that's the way to do it. And Sam, you kind of alluded to it, is try to get the ball to your playmakers, run plays that are, keep the offense simple. Don't do anything too cute, as we say. Don't do anything too complicated. Don't do anything too crazy. Just get the ball to your playmakers. Find guys like Tavon Rulli out of the backfield. Find guys like Brandon Mack, DMR, Jose Barbone. Find guys like that to drive the ball down the field. Don't try to make the big play. Don't try to win the game on one play. Don't try to do anything insane in the first quarter. But ease Matt Duncan's first start. Ease true freshman Matt Duncan into the game.
Just wanted to add this real quick here. I think as you, Sam, you just talked about simplicity, but I think they haven't pulled out any stops with no Trad, with Trad Real and now Matt Duncan. Will we remain to be seen. Don't you think, you should maybe try and go back to that? Maybe if we can get Brandon Mack throwing a pass. I mean, they did that with Anthony Russo, and that just hasn't happened. I mean, granted, Brandon Mack might have to play some quarterback if anything happens, knock on wood. But, I mean, you need why not open up the playbook a little, even if you need to be simple, flea flickers, maybe throwing the ball early on first down. That's something. They need to get their offense going.
I mean, the only thing I'd say in rebuttal of that is Matt Duncan's really only played on the scout team. He has not, he doesn't have the same experience with the playbook as Trad Betty or Real Mitchell do. So,
and I just don't think run pass is going to help you beat ECU,
That's fair.
Well, I mean, if you look at, in fairness though, if you look at this is, again, as much as I'm saying that this isn't anything but a gimme game for Temple, I mean, statistically, again, ECU has played some teams a lot better than Temple has, but I mean, ECU's dead last out of 11 teams in the conference of scoring defense. They're giving up almost 40 points a game. They haven't been great. Again, I think Holton Ayers can make some plays with his arm and his legs, but in total offense, they're eighth in the conference, a spot ahead of Temple, 10th out of 11 teams in total defense. They're giving up an average of more than 485 yards a game. There are 10 out of 11 teams in rushing defense. So you really could run the ball on them. You should be able to run the ball on them. They have given up 20 touchdowns on the ground, 228, almost 228, almost 229 yards a game on the ground. So again, I think it makes sense to run the ball on them. How much they open up the playbook, we'll see. A couple of the coaches have talked to me about Matt Duncan. They've said we like him. He's got some grit to him. He's got some moxie to him. I know those are very cliche football terms, but you saw him scramble for that 8-yard carry. I think it was an 8-yard carry to get a first down. Again, happened in a game that they didn't win, but we'll see what he's made of in terms of throwing the ball. I think they have tried to get the ball to Brandon Mack, but again, the biggest difference, and it's available for anybody with a pair of eyes to see, is that at least, a guy like Trad. Now, Trad was able to make, he got that screen pass. He looked like he had the arm strength on the screen pass out there to Randall Jones 2 weeks ago before things came undone. Real Mitchell had Brandon Mack on that interception, did again to him. And Brandon Mack was not shy about, I don't know, we weren't on the field. We don't know exactly what he said, but it was pretty evident that Brandon Mack was very frustrated that ball didn't get to him. And Real Mitchell doesn't appear, at least right now, to have that arm strength. We'll see if Matt Duncan has it, but they're really, really missing the arm strength piece of things with Anthony Russo. When Anthony Russo's out there, you can say, get the ball to your playmakers. You can zip the ball out there to Jaden Blue. You can get a deep ball out there to Randall Jones, Brandon Mack, maybe Jose Barbone, David Martin Robinson, the playmakers that you do have. We'll see how much Matt Duncan can get done there. I mean, if there's a game to be started, it won't be the most exciting one played. Even if there were fans coming in a normal year, you might get 22,000 fans for ECU the week before Thanksgiving. But if there is a game to ease him in as a starter, this might be it. But there are plays, I think, to be had there on the field. This is not a good defense. And but again, how much they open up the playbook, we'll see. And again, if you're judging Mike Yuremovich, he's now working with his fourth starting quarterback. They had a season like this at Northern Illinois. They've been through this before, but here they are again, but they're doing it under COVID circumstances. But I don't know. I don't know how much they can open up the playbook. If they can do it, if they can run a couple of trick plays and they can pull them off with a true freshman quarterback doing it, kudos to them, because Duncan was not an early enrollee, right? And even if he was, he had two spring practices. So I know that it's easier for us to say. I think it'll be an interesting game to watch and an interesting game to cover because, again, the season has kind of gone down the toilet. There will be no bowl game. There will be no conference championship appearance, certainly. But there'll be a lot to watch on Saturday. But now Matt Duncan gets his shot, and obviously we'll be talking the coming weeks about next year. Does Anthony Russo come back? Does Brandon Mack come back? I think roster management is going to be more important than ever with looking ahead and trying to get some of these guys to come back. Are they draftable? Do they grad transfer somewhere else? I think coaches are going to be worried about that constantly, but at least, we'll see what happens next week. Maybe Anthony Russo does come back and finish up the season against Cincinnati. We'll see, but I think it's an intriguing option now for Temple to look at what it has now. Matt Duncan, again, for his sake, for the team's sake, you hope he stays healthy. If not, you're looking at a true freshman walk-on and Kamal Gray coming in. But there are plays to be had here against an ECU team that has not been good. All right, with that, prediction time, guys. What do we have here?
I'm gonna trend positive here because I'm in a good mood. Going home tomorrow, see my family. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. We'll talk about in the podcast later about some Thanksgiving stuff. I think Matt Duncan plays with a lot of fire, and for a team that hasn't had a whole lot to hang its hat on, I'm going to say that again because I love saying that. It's my new phrase on this podcast, I guess. Maybe they rally around him and win a close game, 23-20. Why not?
There we go.
Interesting. I'm not going to be super pessimistic as I was last week. I think my prediction was 47-10 against UCF. I'm not going to go that crazy, but I think you're right. I think Matt Duncan comes with a chip on his shoulder. He comes with a little bit of fire. I mean, we saw, John, you mentioned that 8-10-yard scramble, whatever it was, for a first down. He came up and he was fired up. I think that's really all he needs is one or two good plays to get himself in the rhythm, get his confidence going. I think that's going to be huge for him early. With that being said, I'm going to take ECU to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be by a lot. I'm going to go ECU 21, Temple 16.
I'm going to go. I'm with Carolina, Sam, on this. I think Temple wins this game. I think in what is obviously going to be a down season any way you slice it, I think this is going to be a bright spot for them. I think you're going to see some flashes from Matt Duncan. Again, this is not a very good ECU defense. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Jairi Wilson, their linebacker, probably they're one of their better, if not their best players on defense, leads them with 3.5 sacks, 6 tackles for a loss. Xavier Smith is their leading tackler with 57 stops on the year. Wilson has 52, but again, not a very stout defense that they're playing against. The game plan is obviously going to be really interesting to watch. Will they keep it simple? But this is a team that they should be able to run against. The whole issue of going run pass may not be a bad thing for them. Let's not forget that Matt Duncan can run it too. I think he's going to make enough plays here. Again, it would be foolish for us to think he's going to play a flawless game, but I think this is a game they're going to win 26-20. I think they're going to need to eke it out at the end. Again, maybe you get a couple field goals here from Rory Bell earlier in the week. Rod Carey talked about the fact that he wants to stick with Rory on kickoffs. Even though Brandon McManus chimed in on Twitter, responding to Sam's tweet, wasn't sure what Rod Carey's rationale was there. Brandon, of course, the Super Bowl winning kicker. You hear his voice at the beginning of our podcast, kicking for the Denver Broncos now. Love Brandon. I think if I were to talk to Brandon, I would say I think Rod's just trying to protect Rory Bell. He's putting the ball through the uprights. He's a young kicker. He is their best place kicking option as far as we know right now. Might be their best kickoff specialist option, but he has put a couple kickoffs out of bounds. But I think it could be a game for him to get some confidence if he can knock a couple more field goals through. Right now, I'm trending a little positive too. I think this is going to be kind of an ugly game, 26-20. I think you'll see Tavon Ruley getting in the end zone, but they are going to be able to run against them. If you can just see a few positive plays out of Matt Duncan, limited mistakes, something for him to work on, because again, they're going to have some things to figure out in so many different fronts in the offseason. If Anthony Russo does come back and plays one more season, then you're bringing in Justin Lynch, who they're really high on. Does one of the quarterbacks ultimately leave and transfer out? Matt Duncan could really kind of put his foot in the ground here and say, hey, I have a say in the future. What that's going to be ultimately, we don't know, but I think it's a good opportunity for him. Again, a good opportunity moving forward for guys like Kobe Wilson, Alex Odom, like we talked about before. We don't know. What did Rod say on Monday? That he's hopeful that he might get Michael Neese this week?
He said that he was going to be back at practice on Tuesday, but he was kind of like one of those things, like we have to see how he reacts. And I mean, that he didn't really sound too optimistic about that.
Yeah. So again, if he doesn't play, then it's David Ngugu at right tackle again. Don't know what the deal is with Hooper and Klein. Again, those guys have both been banged up at different times. So, I mean, a lot of these guys now are just trying to put plays on tape, trying to get a leg up on everybody else heading into what I think everybody hopes will be a somewhat normal spring ball. I guess there's been some good news on vaccines. I am not an infectious disease expert, never will be unless I make a sudden abrupt career change. But I think the biggest thing you're looking for now is for these younger players to develop again, put some positive plays on tape and move forward. This is their best chance to do it. I think, I think they pull it out on Saturday. I think it's a 26-20 win. Then we'll get into Cincinnati, which will be a much tougher game for them, but that'll round out our predictions for this portion of the show. All right, so kind enough to join us on the scoop this week is Dartmouth transfer Brendan Barry. Brendan, thanks for joining us this week. I know the Temple fan base seems to be pretty excited about you joining the program. This almost, at least from where we sit from the outside looking in, it looked like, obviously Temple was recruiting you back in the spring, and it looked like this might have come together back in the spring. It looked like you ultimately decided to stay at Dartmouth. How did this come together? Was the Ivy League canceling its season kind of the impetus for you saying, okay, I'm gonna leave now, or was that not necessarily the case? Can you kind of fill us in on the backstory, because it's been interesting to see how this comes together, and now Temple's getting a player and you that can really shoot the heck out of the ball and really help them this season.
Yeah, it's just a very unique situation, especially with the way the Ivy rules work. So I think once like mid-August, September hit, I had a strong feeling that the Ivy League wasn't going to play, just in their quick decision on the fall sports, with all of the different reopening plans for each school, especially schools like Princeton and Harvard, who weren't planning on letting any students back throughout the year. So, and typically the Ivy rule is that you have to treat athletes the same as everyone. So they couldn't get any preferential treatment in terms of being on campus when no one's there or during breaks or anything like that. So, once like mid-September or mid-August going into September, I was, getting a little nervous. So that's why I ended up, enrolling in my last 4 classes for the fall term, where if the Ivy by some miracle said we were going to play, I could still drop out of 2 and then move those to the winter and play. But I think once Strickland went down, that's when one of the assistants, Coach Fennerty, hit me up and was like, we need some depth and a veteran at the guard position, and we're still very interested in you. Got a scholarship spot there. So, it just ended up all working out.
Brendan, you haven't played in a collegiate game since the 2018-2019 season due to an injury that required surgery on your hip. Can you tell us what you were able to learn from that year off about yourself and just about the game of basketball?
I think for me, it almost just renewed my love of the game, just sitting there and, I'd never been out for more than 2 weeks with an injury, like a sprained ankle or something like that. So, for one, it was super tough on me to watch my teammates go out there and battle without me there. But yeah, I think for me, it just I already loved the game, and I think it just increased it that much more, and showed how much long I just want to keep playing the game as much as I can. And I think too, it gave me more of a coach's perspective, being there on the sideline and seeing where different adjustments could be made. And, it helped the leadership too, talking to the point guard who took over for me, trying to give him some advice. So I'd say those 3 spots, it kind of helped the most.
And what was that recovery process like for you, on top of kind of where would you say you're at now with that injury?
Yeah, it was pretty smooth recovery. I pretty much started running like 3.5 months after the surgery. So I've been full go for a while now, and just dying to get back on the court, to be honest.
Hey, Brendan, the narrative around the fan base seems that your commitment to Temple means, a pure shooter like yourself is coming in. But, I mean, obviously it's fair to say that you're not a one-dimensional player. How would you describe your game, and what else do you think you really bring to the table?
Right. I think, a lot of people see my shooting numbers and, he's just a shooter who just runs off screens. Like you said, just a one-dimensional guy. And I think I bring a lot more to the table than just that. I've always seen myself as a point guard too. And, I played my last 2 years of college basketball, I played 35 and 36 minutes, bringing the ball up, setting up the offense, coming off a ton of ball screens. So I'm comfortable in a lot of different areas of the court, and just different things I bring to the table. Like I said, coming off ball screens, setting up my teammates, and obviously hitting shots. So I'd say that's kind of my answer to that one.
Hey, Brennan, just to clarify, so logistically, you're able to join the Temple program next month once you're done with your classes at Dartmouth?
Yeah, it's still kind of up in the air,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to be sometime in December, whether it's when Temple's fall term ends, which I believe is the 17th, or after I graduate, which should be somewhere around the 4th or 5th, something like that.
You touched on this already. Jimmy Fennerty reaches out to you once Ty Strickland goes down, and he's getting close to being able to do contact practices. But Jaleel White, one of their true freshmen, is out with meniscus surgery. They have Jeremiah Williams there. What have the coaches talked to you about in terms of like what your role might be? Are they telling you, I know Aaron McKee, any coach really is big on saying, hey, you got to come in and earn it, but you have a body of work that some of those other guys don't have. Have they talked to you at all about saying, hey, Brendan, when you get here, it's full speed ahead. We could see you starting at the point. Have they had those conversations with you yet? Or is it not kind of gotten to that point?
That's kind of the one thing you always hear in the recruiting process is, if people are promising you this or promising you that, like, that's just a bad sign,
Yeah.
So there have been no promises made, and I have to go in there and prove it and earn the trust of my teammates first and foremost. And whether that's starting, coming off the bench, I'm ready to take over any role and do my best in that role and help this team win.
One other quick follow-up for you. How much have you been able to talk to those guys? Because they're a group. I mean, everybody's going through it now with the virus. It's stopping and starting the practice. And in the Ivy League's case, you can't play at all. There at Temple, you're coming to a roster where there are a bunch of new guys that are just getting to know each other. And you're coming into a new mix of guys that are still in that phase. How much do you know of these guys? Have you had a chance to just kind of talk to them and get to know them, even if it's just been virtually or over the phone or Zoom or anything like that?
Not a ton of that yet. I'm sure that'll increase once, I've been super busy preparing for finals and writing papers and stuff. So once that stuff slows down and, hopefully the world gets a little less crazy and, there'll be some more of that.
Brennan, when we spoke last week, you kind of went into detail with me about your relationship with Jimmy Fennerty, and just how you guys come from maybe similar backgrounds. You, the Ivy League, him, the Patriot League. Why do you think you guys hit it off so well? And beyond that, what's your relationship like with the rest of the coaching staff, like Aaron McKee and Chris Clark and such?
Yeah, I think with Coach Fennerty, he just, like I said, he knows my game well, especially coming from a similar conference. So in that regards, it was good. And then personality-wise, I feel like we just kind of hit it off. And then I think the same goes for Coach McKee. He's a super hardworking guy like myself, and he loves the game of basketball, wants to win. So, I think that's a match made in heaven. And then, with all the other coaches, pretty much the same goes for them.
So, Brennan, you had told Sam that you don't think there are many players in the American that kind of play like you or fit that mold. From your perspective, how do you think the game is different between the Ivy League to the American?
Yeah, I think from my limited experience with the American Conference, we actually played at South Florida last year, so that's pretty much all I know. And then watching some Temple games last year. It's a really fast-paced league, up and down league. You got teams like Memphis, Houston pushing the ball up the court, scoring a bunch, SMU. And in the Ivy League, it's more of a slow-paced game, getting into offense, trying to get the best shot every time down the court. So for me, it's almost like the conferences are night and day. But I think for me, I'm just excited for the opportunity to play in a conference like this with all the talent, all the athleticism, and like I said, I think I bring a different element than what's normally seen. I feel like you don't see guys like me in the American a bunch, and I'm excited to see how I stack up against it, and like I said, just excited for the opportunity.
And just a quick follow-up on that. In looking at some of your film from your time at Dartmouth, it looked like you played a lot more off the ball, and a lot more of your three-pointers came from coming off screens or just in catch and shoot. And even going back to your high school days, it looked like it was a lot more of the same. Do you feel like you're more of an off-the-ball guard that wants to catch and shoot? Do you prefer to be the kind of guy that can create space for yourself and create your own scoring opportunities? You're kind of a combo guard, a mix of the two.
Like I said, I kind of see myself as more of a one, but with a lot of offenses guys play these days, it's whatever guard gets the ball is bringing it up. So for me, I'm comfortable in all over the court. I've been playing basketball my whole life. I've been in a ton of different situations, so I think I'm easily adaptable in that sense. And like I kind of touched on earlier, just for me coming off a ball screen, because the way I could shoot, guys got to guard me in certain ways in which it opens up different reads that might not be there for someone without my shooting numbers. So I think for me, a lot of the stuff I was doing at Dartmouth was catch and shoot, just because of the nature of the Princeton offense and how a lot of that is just catching and shooting off reads and off dribble penetration. And a lot of my shots came off those ball screens where, guys messed up a read or something like that, or, I was passing out to an open three. So, like I said, just easily adaptable to all those different situations, I think.
Brendan, we're talking about, the Ivy League. Can you tell us what some of your, favorite memories that you made at Dartmouth, just basketball wise, I guess, in the games over the 4 years, and then, just about, Ivy League basketball in general?
Yeah. So just the Ivy League in general, I think, anyone who pays attention to basketball knows that, it's a really good conference. It's consistently top 13, top 12 in the country. So, and it's only on the rise, it's only going to get better. And I think I said it to someone recently, but, the scouting in the Ivy League is crazy, playing every team back-to-backs, and, just the focus that they have on your game is crazy, and something you don't see all over the country, I think. And my favorite memories, I mean, with the Corona hitting and obviously getting my fifth year kind of taken from me with the the Ivy League getting canceled, I think my favorite memories are more just the little things looking back now, whether it's walking into a practice no one wanted to be at, and getting hyped and making it through that, or the bus trips to Princeton, or just hanging out in the living room of our off-campus house. So the more I think back on it, the more I just think of those little moments and how much I miss that.
And taking you back a moment, before you come to Dartmouth, it appeared you were having to play basketball at the Division III level, either at Williams, MIT, or Amherst, and you kind of started to receive scholarships for Niagara and then Fairleigh Dickinson, and from there's the interest in Dartmouth. And Brown, can you walk us through your original recruitment process and how it kind of heated up in a mere matter of months, and how you ended up at Dartmouth?
Right. So yeah, I was pretty much set on going to Amherst up until, so I just played my senior year out and was hoping to get a D1 offer. And I think it was like the second week of February of my senior year when Fairleigh Dickinson offered me, and the next day I had 50. It was a Saturday game. I had 50 and Niagara was there. It's the first time they talked to me and they offered me. And from there, yeah, it was pretty much just Dartmouth and Brown. I had Siena and Colgate offered me partial 1 year scholarships, which I don't even know if that's a real thing. So definitely wasn't very highly recruited. And in terms of the decision to go to Dartmouth, it really wasn't much of a decision. I know I wanted to go D1. I got accepted to the school. Brown already had a point guard in my class, so and obviously the education. So in those terms, it was, the decision kind of made itself.
Just a quick follow-up here. If you would have told Brendan Barry 5 years ago that you'd be going to play basketball at the American at school at Temple University, what would you would have said if somebody would have told you that?
I mean, for me, I always had that confidence that I could play anywhere. So I'd be surprised that I would have ended up transferring, but and I would have hoped that I got my Dartmouth degree. But like I said, I always felt like I could play anywhere. I've always played against overseas pros since I was in high school, and high level college guys and NBA players. So I always knew if I got the opportunity, I'd be able to do it. So in those terms, I wouldn't be too surprised.
And you have basketball in your bloodline. Your dad played at Fairfield in the mid '80s and got a chance to play in an NCAA tournament. Your grandfather was an All-American honorable mention at Georgetown in the '60s. And your bio says you're related to Hall of Famer and Golden State Warriors great Rick Barry. How has being around basketball your whole life helped your game, and just what's that like to be around basketball lower your whole life?
Yeah, I was pretty much born into it, and a lot of it was just my dad and my older brother and sister, because my dad was coaching basketball in town and for the school. So I was at every practice starting at like 2 years old, just walking around the sideline, dribbling the ball. So and that's part of the reason that I love the game so much. It's pretty much all I know. So kind of what I touched on earlier, I'm trying to play this game as long as I can, and because like I said, I don't know anything else. I don't want to go work 9 to 5, and obviously with the Dartmouth degree is a good thing to kind of fall back on, but my first option's to play basketball as long as possible, and then kind of figure it out after that.
And I have to ask, what's your relationship to Rick Barry?
I get this question from everyone. So he's my grandpa's cousin. So like you touched on, my grandpa was played at Georgetown, and then his cousin, I believe he went to Miami. But yeah, they used to be pretty close.
Now, Brendan, I know that when Temple was originally recruiting you, they were still in the process of being an Under Armour school. Now they're a Nike school, and I know Dartmouth is a Nike school too. So I'm sure that wasn't the end all be all of your decision, but is it an added bonus? Are you a Nike guy?
I've definitely always worn like Nike shoes. I think I had like one pair of Steph Curry shoes, but just out of familiarity, I think yes, it's definitely a good thing. But I don't really care much about how I'm looking out there on the court. Obviously, with this, see this hair going, but no, I mean, obviously, it's cool to be able to, I've always worn Nike, so it's cool for that comfort, but otherwise, it's not really much of a big deal for me.
Brendan, playing, I guess you guys at Rumps and Fairhaven, you guys were what, in the shore conference up in, like, I don't know if you call it Central Jersey, North Jersey. I know people get, I used to cover South Jersey when I was working for Gannett. I covered like St. Augustine Prep and all those schools, but I know every area of the country has its own identity for basketball. It's big in Philly, big in New York, big in DC. And I know Jersey kind of has its own identity, and there's great basketball there. And whether it was in high school or even just maybe on the AAU circuit or even just over the summer, who are some of the top guys that you played against, and what are your memories of that? Because there's great basketball in that part of the state.
Yeah, I would say the best player I ever played against, outside of Randy Foy, I've been working out with since 8th grade. I've getting killed by him all the time. But besides that, I think I was in 8th grade, so he was in 9th grade. It was Isaiah Briscoe, and he was, I think, the same size then as he is now, and I was probably like 5'6", so it was, you could imagine how that one went. But that was probably the best player I ever played against, just like in that sense. Also played against guys like Tyler Roberson a bunch, and then the guys in my class, obviously from Jersey and the Ivy League, guys like Bryce Aiken, Brandon Anderson from Don Bosco. So there's definitely a ton of talent, and I think that kind of prepared me to get where I am now.
This might sound like a simple question, but you can obviously shoot the hell out of the ball. When you last played, there weren't too many people in the entire country who were shooting it better than you did, particularly from 3-point range. Is shooting something that's always come naturally to you? Because you know how it works in basketball. Like some guys get better with it. Some guys just have a broken shot that can't be fixed. Is it just something that came naturally to you? Obviously people work at it, but how did your shot evolve? Or is it something that's always just kind of been there for you?
I think once I got to like my full size, like full height, whatever, probably in like freshman year of high school, sophomore year of high school, that's when I really kind of saw that I could shoot it. And a lot of that's due to, my dad teaching me when I was young, just the mechanics. And my high school coach had us in the gym a ton, working on it too. And for me, I know that my survival as a basketball player depends on being able to shoot. Obviously I'm not, the most athletically gifted guy, or, I'm not jumping out of the gym or anything like that. So I know that I got to be crafty. I got to be able to shoot to, open different things up for me. And, that's why it's so important.
Just to follow up on that, you mentioned being crafty, and that is a thing. Again, like even if guys aren't super athletic, it looks, again, I haven't had the chance to see you play live, but you see film and you are able to create some spacing. You are able to get in the lane and score in a bunch of different ways against some good teams. Is that a feel thing that just takes some time once you get to the college level and you kind of prove yourself and say, okay, I did it against these guys. I did it against these guys. Is it something that's kind of a feel that develops over time?
Yeah, I think definitely as you play more games, it just comes more natural to you. But I've always had to play that way. I've always, not been a great athlete, or not been I had major D1 athlete. And, I think just growing up and not being that great athlete, it kind of teaches you how to score in different ways and how to set your guys up in different ways. And I think, when you're used to playing that way, going to college, it's obviously just kind of the same thing.
Just a couple of final questions for you before we get to this mailbag question from one of our readers. You talked about, like, you get the Rick Barry question all the time. You've been covered in college and you get a lot of the same questions from reporters all the time, I'm sure. What's something that people don't know about you, or something that you maybe don't get the chance to talk about as much as you'd like? Is there something you do off the court that people don't know about you, or something that you wish people would ask you about?
Wow. That's an interesting question. To be honest, like, not really. Like I said, there's not much to my life. I just love to hoop. So, I mean, there's really not much besides that. Pretty much everyone's got it covered, I'd say.
What about maybe Thanksgiving's coming up? You got a favorite thing you're looking forward to for Thanksgiving? Favorite side dish? Favorite food that you like?
I'm a big mashed potatoes guy. My mom makes some really good mashed potatoes, so probably have to go with that.
The one mailbag question we have here from a reader, this is from a screen name. The screen name on our message board is Park Al. Question is, Temple and Philadelphia are 180-degree turn from Dartmouth and Hanover. What led you to choose a small town private college originally? And I kind of touched on this a little bit already. And then what led you to choose a major city public university for your grad studies? I know obviously you talked about the basketball piece, maybe even just in terms of the campus settings and stuff. What's the difference, and what do you like about that?
Yeah, I don't think you could get any more different going from a place like Hanover to a place like Philly. I mean, like I kind of talked about basketball wise, I think I'm adaptable on the court and off the court. I could fit into a lot of different situations. And I think, Dartmouth, obviously super cold, snows a lot, pretty small campus, only about 4,000 undergrads. So I think, like I kind of touched on earlier too, is, that decision kind of made itself. So I would have went anywhere to play. And it's kind of the same idea with Philly too. Obviously it's a great city, but I would play basketball anywhere. The location doesn't really matter a ton. And but I'm excited to experience Philly. Obviously it's going to be a lot different with all the COVID restrictions and everything. So I think it'll be cool. I'm a big Giants fan, so I don't know how that'll go over well with the Temple fans, but it is what it is.
Hey, the Eagles have no leg to stand on right now, and I mean the Giants coaches are getting into fistfights and stuff. But hey, they won last week, so What are you going to do? Actually, one last quick question for you. I know you've probably talked to Sam, both Sams here about it. I know you talked about how important Jimmy Fennerty has been in your recruitment, but what have your conversations been like with Aaron McKee, and what's it like kind of just looking ahead and saying, okay, I'm going to go play for a guy who, the whole deal, played in the league for 13 years and played with Allen Iverson. What have your conversations with him been like, and what do you look forward to most in playing for a guy that was in the league for 13 years?
Yeah, I think with him, he's straightforward. He won't BS you. He'll tell you how it is, and that's how I like to be coached. I'm fine with being coached hard, and I think a guy with his pedigree, you can't help but be excited to learn under him. And I touched on it earlier. He just wants to win, and he loves the game of basketball, and those are the two things that matter most to me.
I just wanted to ask you a quick follow-up. You mentioned Randy Foy. I mean, what's your relationship like with him? You said you've been working out with him since 8th grade. He's obviously, enriched here and in this city playing at Villanova. So you just talk about your relationship with him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started off as more of my high school coach is really good friends with Jay Wright, so kind of that's how he started working out in my high school, and how I kind of started working out with him too. So for the first 4 or 5 years, it's mostly just working out, just seeing him at the gym and stuff, playing pickup, and then kind of once I got into college, it became kind of more than that. Like, he's a very good friend of mine now. I'll lift at his house a ton, and close with his family and things like that. So I think that relationship's been really helpful because I've seen what it takes to get to that highest level, and I've seen all the hard work he puts in, and I think working out with a guy like him, especially when you're younger and you're just trying to get better, is when you're doing the same drills as him, going behind him, and you just want to keep up, so that kind of, when you're trying to keep up with an NBA player, an NBA starter, it just raises your game to that next level, I think. And a lot of my success is due to those workouts, and being in there every day in the summer, getting better, and then kind of just picking his brain on different aspects of the game. So that relationship has been huge for my basketball career.
Hey, Brendan, sorry, one last final one for you. We'll let you go, and we really, really appreciate this. This has been fun. This season, the NCAA has said that this is essentially kind of like an eligibility-free season. I don't know if you've thought this far ahead, because honestly, who knows how many games you guys are going to be able to get to play. The virus has been so tricky. Is it a possibility for you that you might consider coming back and playing another season? I mean, you'll have your Dartmouth degree. You're essentially coming as a grad transfer. Do you know much about what your options would be? Like, if, let's say, the season happens, but you guys only get to play 10 or 12 games, and you have the option of coming back and playing one more college season. Is that something that might be in your plans, or you kind of feel like you're done after this year?
Obviously there's question to be answered on their side, and on my side too, in terms of pro options, things like that. But kind of what I touched on earlier, I want to play basketball as long as I can, and if I could get another year playing close to home, and who knows, next year maybe, or hopefully, COVID, this vaccine will be working and fans will be allowed, my parents will be allowed, things like that, close to home. So it's definitely something I'd be very open to, but kind of like I said, there's still, things that are up in the air in that regard.
Gotcha. Brendan, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be able to see you and cover you in some capacity this season, depending on what the restrictions are and how many people are allowed in the building and all that stuff. But again, thanks for spending time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
All right. So big thank you to Brendan Barry. Again, as you heard there, a couple of loose ends to tie up. Sounds like he might be able to join the team next month. So if Temple does indeed start its season later this month up in Connecticut, he won't be with them then. We'll touch on this in a second in terms of basketball availability. Earlier today, we did talk to Aaron McKee, Jake Forrester, Dre Perry. Who else did we talk to? Damian Dunn. It was those three guys and Aaron, correct? So point guard position's kind of up in the air again. Brendan Barry doesn't get to the team and start to work out with him until next month. But what stood out to you about this conversation with Brendan?
I think the biggest thing, like, it was interesting to hear him talk about to hear his story about kind of how he ended up at Temple, but B, to hear about how he views himself as a player. I mean, the biggest thing, and one of the bigger things I was interested in kind of going into this interview was the narrative around him coming to Temple is Temple's getting a shooter and that's it. So to hear him kind of talk about, like, he isn't a one-dimensional player. He's a guy that can do more than that. He's a guy that can be crafty. He's a guy that can create space for himself along the perimeter. He's a guy that can create for his teammates. And he understands, like, he's not the most athletic guy on the floor. He's not going to jump out of the gym, like he said, but he needs to do other things. He needs to be able to shoot, needs to be able to create on the floor, to be able to keep himself in the game and to be able to make plays and to be able to be an effective member of the team. So it was interesting to hear him talk about, like, that he is more than just a shooter. He isn't just a one-dimensional player.
Yeah, what I found to be interesting is how he basically said that he likes that he's not coming in promised a role. You would think somebody who's a veteran player and has 1 year left of eligibility and transferring from, the play their last year would want to go somewhere where a role is promised and that they can finish out their collegiate career as a starter. But for him, it's like, I don't want to come in here with that role. That's not the type of, player that I am. I like to be coached where, not everything is handed to me. So I thought that was definitely interesting that he knows that he has to come in and fight for his role. And I think Temple should be, appreciative that that's the type of player that he is, that he's going to come in with the chip on the shoulder and ready to compete.
I think the other thing they're getting with him is, and this kind of gets lost in his story as people find out about him, obviously he had a very good career at Dartmouth. And as we said earlier, I mean, you just look at the numbers, he can really shoot the hell out of the ball, but a guy that when he was playing at Rumson Fairhaven up in, I guess, central northish Jersey, at one point looked like he was destined for a D3 or a D2 career. And Sam, as you said, his recruitment just kind of really heated up in a matter of days. And what stands out to me about him, obviously we haven't spent a lot of time around him other than just virtually here. He kind of just seems to have this attitude of like, all right, yeah, I'm just going to keep working my way up, seems pretty unflappable. And now has gotten to this level. I think that his attitude could really be a beneficial thing for a team that I don't think this team finds its identity this season. Again, and we'll touch on this in a second. Again, we talked to Aaron McKee, talked to Jake Forrester, Dre Perry, Damian Don, and they're pretty transparent about the fact, like, it's been tough. It's been tough getting to know each other, stopping and starting. And, this group could maybe use a little bit of that mentality where you have somebody who's steady and it's like, yep, I've never been guaranteed anything, but, I've kind of gotten to this point in my career. I think adding his, again, we're not around these guys, but they're on the court, off the court and all this stuff. I think adding Brennan's dynamic into things will really be interesting for however many games they play. Again, we've talked before. We talked to Craig Angelos last week about the challenges of the schedule, what things are going to be like. We're heading back into another spike with the pandemic. We know the restrictions in the city of Philadelphia, but however many games they can play, if Brendan eventually gets on the court with them, could potentially be like a real X factor and a stabilizing piece for them that again, there's so much youth at the point guard position, at the guard position in general. That's what stands out to me about him. He can shoot. I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of craftiness he can bring to that offense, because that is something that's a feel thing, even if he's not the most athletic guy in the world, as he says by his own admission. I think that's going to be a real interesting piece for him once he gets into the mix in December. We talked earlier again about the fact that we got to talk to Aaron McKee today. Again, Dre, Jake Forrester, Damian Dunn. Want to talk a little bit about that and play a couple of audio clips for you before we get into the mailbag and close this out. Again, as you listen to these guys, they sound excited to get on the court, but they also sound tired, and they kind of just have this vibe of like, it is what it is. They've had pauses. They're one of the things Aaron said is they practiced 6 times as a team in the last 3 weeks. And if you think about that and you're listening at home and listening as a fan, listening to this podcast, yeah, I mean, they're preparing to potentially play a game. Aaron said, to review, and we'll have this up on the site if you haven't seen it already, the NJIT game scheduled for November 25th, 1 p.m. Aaron said, yeah, not sure if it's happening just yet. We'll have to see. And it's just the COVID world we're living in, but practicing 6 times as a team in the last 3 weeks for a team that's had a big roster overhaul, had injuries with Ty Strickland, with Jaleel White. Aaron McKee did talk to us earlier today, and he said, hey, Jaleel was really kind of starting to assert himself before he got hurt. So they've had double doses and triple doses of adversity here, but they're very much kind of just doing their best with this stuff. And there's so many new faces. I can't imagine. I've covered this team for more than 20 years. I can't imagine a more interesting time in the history of the program in recent memory to cover it. But what were some of the things that stood out to you guys from the conversation today? There was a lot to take in, a lot of uncertainty more than anything else, but we'll get into some audio here in a second. But what stood out to you guys from the conversations?
Well, two things. One, John, as you mentioned, the 6 practices in the last 3 weeks is a third of what they should have been practicing in the last 3 weeks. And the 4 positive tests in the program that have had them shut down in and out of the COVID protocol since the summer. That was fascinating. It's something we didn't really know. We knew that they had been in a pause recently, but then had gotten back to practice last week. But to hear that there were 4 tests was surprising. 4 positive tests since the summer was surprising. The other big thing that stood out to me was the fact that both Aaron McKee and I think it was Dre Perry spoke highly of a guy like Nick Jourdain, who we had heard kind of during his recruitment that he had a lot of potential as a bigger, like a bigger stretch 4 wing almost that can get up and down the floor. He plays aggressively, but he's a thinner kid, and he still has some, he has to kind of iron out the edges, but he's got a lot of potential. And last media availability a couple of weeks ago, we had heard similar stuff about him kind of finding his way and not really quite being there. So to hear Dre and hear Aaron McKee both talk about he's been impressive passing the ball, he's been impressive getting up and down the floor, and speaking more highly of him, I thought was interesting. And then one other thing I'll say is that with the depleted backcourt, without Ty and without Jaleel White, Aaron McKee kind of made it sound like that there wasn't really going to be there wasn't going to be a guy that's like you're our point guard. He's breeding combo guards in a game of positionless basketball. He's breeding guys that can, because we've talked about his vision for Temple basketball is getting up and down the floor, just get it and go, get it and go, get it and go. And to have that, you can't be thinking about one guy to go get the ball. Everybody on the team has to be able to be comfortable with the ball in their hands. That's why we heard Dre Perry say, John, I think you were the one that asked him, could you envision yourself being someone that has the ball in their hands at the helm of this offense? And he was like, yeah, I could see myself, or I could definitely be that guy to, set up the offense in a sense. Everybody has to be able to do that on a team that with what Aaron McKee wants. So to hear him talk about breeding combo guards and breeding guys that can be comfortable with the ball in their hands, I think was at least noteworthy.
Yeah, just staying on that topic about, the guards, I think another point that was brought up about is Damian Dunn. I mean, Dre Perry kind of talked him up, and obviously Dunn was talking for the first time, and it seems like every time we've asked about Damian Dunn, he's just raved about, and they can't really wait to see what this guy can do. And like I said, Dre was like, wow, this guy can really be talented in spurts. So I think, and we did get a chance to speak to him as well, and it's kind of been a tough process for him, because you look at a guy like, as we mentioned, who had all of last season where he played 18 minutes there's Tulsa. That was his season. He had the red shirt, and then he has, all these people talking about him with his opportunity, and now it's kind of limited by the fact with COVID. So I think, that was probably one of the things that stood out to me, and I think that's definitely a player that you would like to see once he hits the court and is fully healthy. What is he capable of? How much can he increase our offense and take this team to another level with his play?
So we've mentioned Nick Jourdain, and I agree with Sam. I think that was an interesting piece that stood out. And again, I mean, there's so much left ahead as to how many games they play, what the schedule, what the season's going to look like. But yeah, I mean, we asked kind of an open-ended question. Who stood out to you? Aaron McKee mentioned Nick Jourdain, who could be big, because I asked Aaron about Caleb Battle, said they still don't know anything about his waiver, even though ironically enough, all the guys that left Temple seem to be getting their waivers approved. Josh Pierre-Louis, Justin Hamilton, and
Lonnie Scott.
Still, according to Aaron, no official word yet on Caleb Battle, who I think we can agree would be a huge piece for them if he's eligible, given his
also spoke highly of him.
Yes. But we'll play this clip again, Aaron talking about Nick Jourdain, because he did say that he's leaning towards Sage Tolbert sitting out this season and then wanting to have 2 years with Sage. I think that's Aaron's way of saying we want to have 2 full years with him when we're not dealing with a pandemic. I think they really, really like him a lot. Not that they don't like some of these other guys. So if Sage is out, We were talking about this before we recorded this portion of the pod. You don't know what you're getting with Erasmus Parks. He's had that nagging shoulder injury. And really after Jake, you're playing small ball unless you can throw a guy like Nick out there. And so apparently he's flashed a little bit. So here's Aaron McKee talking about freshman forward Nick Jourdain.
Nick Jourdain has been showing some flashes. He has good size and good athleticism. He has a good feel for the game. It's been, I'm not going to say a pleasant surprise, but it's because it's why we recruited the kid. I thought he was under-recruited, but all of those guys had their moments, and I'm pleased at what I'm seeing from him.
All right, so we will have a lot more in the coming weeks. Stay tuned. Sounds so cliche, but it's all we can really say with hoops. We'll see if the NJIT is indeed the opener, if they're able to play a schedule moving forward as the world in this region works through the coronavirus pandemic. We have some mailbag questions to get to for all of you, ones that were submitted, a little bit of everything, football, hoops, some Thanksgiving questions. So we got a couple basketball questions that we'll get to here. This one from Park Al, who also submitted the mailbag question to Brendan Barry. Question from him. Last year we saw Jake, meaning Jake Forrester, struggle with fouls, and Erasmus Parks re-injure his shoulder. Is Nick Jourdain, kind of good segue here, is Nick Jourdain ready to play meaningful minutes, or will Dre and JP be in line to play the 5 for stretches should Jake and Erasmus' issues reappear? Good question here. Again, we haven't just talked about Nick Jourdain, but haven't talked about whether or not he's ready to play meaningful minutes. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
If I were to guess, I would say that Nick Jourdain is looking better, but not ready to play quote unquote meaningful minutes. I think he'll probably find himself in a game. I mean, Aaron McKee said today he would be all in on being able to play a 9 or 10 man rotation if they have the legs for it. And if, that can be something that the team can be successful with, he would be all in on that. And I think that's something we talked about last year of him, like feeling like he wanted to do that, wanted to stretch the bench, wanted to make quick subs. So if that happens, absolutely Nick Jourdain can play meaningful minutes, but we'll see if he's ready by the time the season comes in terms of just having his legs under him, having the right conditioning and being game ready. As for Dre and JP being in line to play the 5, I don't envision either of them really playing the 5. I think both of them are stretch 4s. I think Dre is finding himself leaning more towards becoming a 3 and a wing, just by the way his game has evolved and kind of the way he's talked about his game. And just on the note about Jake, he had mentioned that someone had asked him about, like, you had spent some time on the bench last year just based on, an inability to stay in the game because he kept getting into foul trouble, which is true. He was tied for the second most fouls in the team with 69. Someone had 71. I'm blanking on who it was. But Jake had said, like, I have been working on my basketball IQ. I have been working on positioning, just watching a lot of film, slowing the game down when I'm in the post, and feeling like that was a huge thing he worked on in the offseason. So it could happen. Those issues could reappear, but it sounds like that's something he knows he had to correct and he's actively worked towards fixing.
Sam, you probably know better than me, but I think, they're probably going to do their best to alternate probably Jake and Erasmus Parks of the 5. But if, Erasmus' shoulder becomes an issue and Jake gets in the foul trouble, I think they're going to have to play JP or Dre at the, maybe as an untraditional 5 and go small. Just for maybe stretches of time, just because we don't know how they will be from a depth perspective and whether fouling becomes an issue with the shoulder. So I think we could see it, not like the traditional 5 in a sense, but them playing like small ball, which I think we're going to have to see them do. And this is just kind of a product of what their depth chart is and losing guys like Damian Moore and Justin Hamilton.
All right, next question here from the mailbag comes from Jeff MD49, referring to something we touched on a little bit earlier in the podcast. I don't understand what the AAC was thinking in requiring Temple to play these last few games when P5 teams with far healthier squads got permission to postpone or cancel. So again, he's referring to, and it was quite understandably some chatter on our message board about Rod Carey saying, hey, if it was up to me, we would not have played the last 3 weeks. So again, just to review here, we'll tell you what we know. Rod said that, and he said, but the powers that be felt differently. You guys followed up with a Temple spokesperson, and that Temple spokesperson made it clear that Rod Carey had Temple's full support in terms of doing what he wanted to do. So we know that from Temple's side and what Temple is saying there. Then you guys reached out to Chuck Sullivan from the American, and Chuck Sullivan in part tells you guys it's ultimately up to Temple. So who knows? All we can tell you is, what we're getting from either side of the coin there. But and again, I give Rod Carey, and I think you guys felt the same way. I give him credit for being that candid, and it's certainly not, as he said, I think he said something to the effect of like, I want these young men to be able to compete, but injuries, our health is of utmost importance. If you get a guy who's coming right off of COVID protocol, and you say, get in there and play a game, injuries can happen just because if you aren't prepared, if you're coming out of protocol, or all these other things they're dealing with. So I understand Jeff MD's question here. I don't know. We can't really fairly say we can tell you what we've been told. I don't know if it was definitely a situation where Temple said, hey, we would like to not play this game. And if the American was like, tough, you got to play it. Now, obviously they gave him the leeway to move the SMU game back a couple of days. Unless we're in those conversations, we don't know for sure. It's a fair question. I get it. I think Rod and Temple appear to be, taking the right course of action there to say, hey, going to be honest with you, we might not have wanted to play these games. It's hard to say for sure how it all went down. But again, fans probably only really care about wins and losses. I get that. I give Rod credit for being as candid as he was and saying, as much as we want to play, these last 3 weeks have been less than ideal. I don't know. That's not an exact answer, Jeff, to your question, but a fair question. But all we can really tell you is what we were told on both sides of the issue there. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add to that.
No, John, I think you covered it pretty well. At the end of the day, it seems like I mentioned earlier in the pod that it's a he said, she said thing. Temple thinks that they weren't. Rod Carey literally said he thought his team safety was in question. Didn't think they should play these 3 games in the conference. Kind of, when we talked to them, they kind of pushed it off and said that's up to the university. So I don't think we're going to get a direct answer out of here, but I think it says enough what the head coach is being that candid and has the support of his administration to not play, and they had to play. So,
yeah, and I don't doubt for a second that Rod had Temple's support on that, because I think Temple, again, they face it, maybe like some other areas, they face an extra layer with dealing with the city of Philadelphia and the extra restrictions that come with battling COVID and keeping people as healthy as possible. I don't think Temple would ever be in a position where they'd say, no, you got to get out there and play. I think Temple's, as we know, like just through the layers of what they had to get through to practice in the preseason, I think Temple's approach has been one of exercising an abundance of caution. It's just, I don't know. It's just a bizarre season to cover. But again, give Rod credit for being as candid as he was there. A couple more questions to get to. D-Blaze 75. Number one, this is a 2-parter. Gun to your head. Percentage odds, can't say 50%. That Temple will have a new offensive coordinator next season. And number 2, one side dish for Thanksgiving you'd like to eliminate. So question number 1. Hate these questions, but I guess it's a fair one. What do you guys think? Percent odds that Mike Yuremovich, Temple's offensive coordinator, will be back.
That he'll be back, I would say, are pretty high. I don't think they're going to dump him. But what do you guys think?
I would tend to agree. I think that this season is just kind of a mulligan all years around, and I know Temple fans don't want to hear that. But if you look at the reality of the situation, we've definitely criticized the play calling, and rightfully so. And I think the play calling has come into question. I don't think it was an issue in the Navy game besides maybe the call that Carey overruled Yuremovich with, and then if that was probably, and then Russo, like Sam has pointed to, was kind of praised the way that he was calling plays. But they're on their 4th quarterback now. I think it's in a pan. It's kind of hard to evaluate this season, but obviously I think if there's going to be a coaching change, Mike Yuremovich seat is probably the hottest out of anybody, but I wouldn't put any sort of money on that.
Yeah, people can call me soft for this all they want. If they want to, that's fine. I always hate speculating about the future of somebody's job, even if they're college coaches. So again, I understand and appreciate the question, but I doubt it's going to happen. I think Rod Carey, again, just asking us to speculate, I think Rod Carey would be hard pressed to go to one of his guys who he's coached with for a while and said, hey, I know you had 25 different variables to deal with, but it's time to scram. We need a new offensive coordinator. Again, has the offense had its struggles with play calling, red zone stuff? Absolutely. It's fair to question, and it's fair to scrutinize their performance as coaches, but just don't see it happening after a season like this. I think I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I've talked to a couple of NFL people recently, and they talk a lot as NFL coaches and say it's really hard to just fairly judge anybody in college football this year, and maybe even their profession with what they've been dealing with. So I don't see it happening after this season. One side dish for Thanksgiving you guys would like to eliminate?
I would just go over here because my dad is the only one that eats it at our Thanksgiving table. And fortunately, my parents are very great cooks, but this is not something that they cook as they canned cranberry sauce. Just doesn't do anything for me.
Sam,
I was gonna say
the 21 gun salute there.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Cranberry sauce, get it out of here. No need for it. Unnecessary food.
Have you guys ever, I don't want to prolong this, but have you guys ever had actual cranberry sauce with the cranberries mixed in, a more natural cranberry sauce has always been just sliced out of the can?
The can.
Maybe. I don't know. My mom makes it, and I don't know what she does, but I usually just like, it's not for me. So
I can't think of anything that I would want to eliminate. I can tell you that, like, I think what I neglect more than anything else, and Brendan Barry won't like me for this answer, standard mashed potatoes. I'll eat them. My biggest issue with any meal is what my biggest thing. My wife teases me for this. All my friends do. My eyes are bigger than my stomach. If they're appetizers, I'll pick and pick and pick. Then it gets to the main course. I'll eat half of it. And then when people leave, I'll go eat more leftovers, fall asleep watching football. I mean, I like dark meat for turkey, love sweet potatoes, I probably eat too much stuffing. I don't dislike mashed potatoes, but like there's green bean casserole. I don't mind cranberry sauce. You gotta have some sweet with the savory, mix it in. I don't know if there's anything I would definitely get rid of, but sometimes I think I take mashed potatoes for granted. Would not get rid of them, but I don't know.
Can we agree that Thanksgiving leftovers are probably the best part about Thanksgiving?
But then,
Absolutely.
yes. Then we were, Chelsea and I, my wife and I were talking about this yesterday, not long after we eradicated the bird from our house. Last year we went through so much because this is the first year in a while that we're not hosting. We're going to go out to my parents' house. You feel like you have to eat the leftovers and just go through them and go through them and go through them, or else you're being wasteful. But do you guys ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm Thanksgiving out. I'm Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's probably by that Saturday I'm done. We usually have a good amount of leftovers because we do it like weird. We'll have like appetizers like during lunchtime. Like my mom will make like buffalo chicken dip and like pepperoni bread and that sort of stuff.
No, that's not weird at all. I mean, that's kind of how we grew up too. Like you'd have all sorts of different appetizers. Then it's like you have all this stuff to eat too. So
yeah, I mean, I gorge myself with that stuff, and then we eat around dinner time during like the second half of the second game. And then, I mean, usually like we'll have a good amount of leftovers, but usually by like that Saturday, I'm Thanksgiving now.
Thanksgiving. I've never hosted a Thanksgiving in my life, or at least my parents have. Whatever, my house, it's always been. I go to New York to see family, so I always have the Thanksgiving like early dinner, the breakfast the next morning, whatever that looks like, and then like sandwiches for lunch, and then I take off.
I can't remember. I think I actually I could be wrong. I either did this last season or the season before. I actually think I brought Thanksgiving leftovers to a Temple football game.
I think you did. I remember you tweeting about it, and you were like introducing Graham to like stuff.
That's right. Yes, it was last year because you can only, again, we're fortunate to eat at these games. Can only take so much of the Link cheesesteaks, but I don't know. I think I brought leftovers last year. So we're talking about that. And it's like, all right, how soon before you're like, I can't take this anymore? A couple more to get to here. Another Thanksgiving related question, screen name Joe Becca from our message boards. With COVID, will you brine your birds or soak them in Lysol? Definitely not soaking them in Lysol, though I love the humor there. Do you guys, another turkey question here. I know we got to cut out of here in a few minutes. Do you guys, I mean, how do your families, like when you eat Thanksgiving, like do they do anything special with the turkeys? My family's never made deep fried turkey. Or your family's just making it like straight in the oven? Any interesting turkey stories? You guys have any ways you like to eat your turkey other than in Lysol?
I'm unsure whether we smoked our turkey last year, but we might have. We might do that this year. We've done it before. I mean, that's just kind of like, besides frying. I mean, I feel like that's a Southern thing to do, but I don't trust I love my dad to death, but I don't think anybody on our house trusts him frying a turkey. So, we'll go with that.
Well, similar to Sam's parents, my aunt and uncle are both incredible cooks, and they're the ones that always host our Thanksgiving. And it's the kind of thing where like, just stay out of the kitchen. So I have absolutely no clue how our Thanksgiving meals are prepped. I just come for the food and The good times. Strictly
Strictly
vibes.
Good vibes.
Good vibes only from Sam Cohn. Last couple of questions. Sam just shot me a look like you're too old to be saying that. Second to last question here from Ray Dunn, our esteemed WHIP sports director and
Friend of the program.
Friend of the program, friend of the podcast, from Twitter at Ray Dunn BTB. Favorite pie?
Pecan or pumpkin. I like pumpkin too, but pecan. I'm a sucker for pecan pie.
Definitely pecan pie or pumpkin. Pumpkin, I think over just pumpkin. I don't know. I love pumpkin everything, so that's definitely like puts it over the top. And I'll switch my answer. It's pumpkin.
Sam, we were talking about pecan pie, pecan or pecan.
We all just said it differently.
Is pecan like more the southern way to say it, Sam? Although you just said pecan.
Pecan, yeah, and pecan. What I have no idea.
Sometimes
my southern twang will come out, but I don't know.
There's a place near us. Again, they are not an official sponsor of the Scoop, but there is a place. They have one in the Reading Terminal Market, and there's one around here called the Head Nut. They have all sorts of just good coffees and nuts and all these things. They have pecans there. And when my wife and I were out running an errand yesterday, we're like, oh, we have them. They have them there. We should get some. We might put them on top of sweet potatoes. I love pecan pie. It hasn't been a big part of what we do for Thanksgiving. I'm more of a pumpkin pie person. I like apple pie. I'm going to try to make an apple pie again. I made one a couple of years ago when we hosted. My buddy Todd Zalecki was over a couple of years ago. His wife and their son, they came over a couple of years ago for Thanksgiving. And I made the mistake. I spilled, you're only supposed to put a little bit of nutmeg into a pie. And I spilled almost like the whole thing into it. So I looked at my wife. I was like, what do we do here? She's like, it's going to be a spicy apple pie. So I remember Todd taking a bite of it and saying, Johnny, this pie is, it's got a zing to it. It's got a zip. It's got an extra edge. I like it. I was like, you like it? He's like, yeah, it's good. I was like, definitely not intentional, purely accidental, but we don't have to tell anybody else. So
I love it.
Having said that, definitely more of a, sorry about the phone there. Definitely more of a pumpkin pie person. Last question, at Temple Fan Al, two-parter. Starting five predictions for the first game of the season for basketball, and who on the podcast would you trust most to make the best Thanksgiving meal?
Both phenomenal questions. We'll start with the first one. Starting five prediction for the first game of the season. I'm going to go with Damian Dunn, JP Mormon, Dre Perry, Quincy Adamakoya, and Jake Forrester. Dre at the 3, JP at the 4, Jake at the 5, Damian at the 1, Quincy at the 2.
I'm going to go with you pretty much same, but I think Jeremiah will be the point just because they might want to have a true point guard in there over Quincy and Quincy coming off the bench. So that would be Jake, Dre, JP, Dame, and Jeremiah Williams for me.
This is my best guess. And again, we asked Aaron McKee. I asked Aaron earlier today if he heard anything about Caleb Battle's waiver. Said he hasn't heard anything yet. Trying to predict what the NCAA does is a fool's errand. So who knows? But I'm going to try to be optimistic here. I'm mostly in line with what you guys are saying. I think Damian Dunn will start. They seem to have a lot of trust in him. JP Mormon, Dre Perry, Jake Forrester. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Caleb Battle gets his waiver and starts, and he's the fifth starter, whenever that might be. We'll see. Although I don't know who that fifth starter might be. I think maybe if it's not him, maybe Jeremiah Williams is your wild card there. They've been talking about him. We'll see. Love this question. Kyle was around for this one.
I was going to say, I could see Caleb's waiver situation being similar to Jake's last year, where it comes a couple games into the season. It doesn't come by opening day.
Trying to bring some optimism into 2020, but we know
not easy
sometimes. Yeah. And second question here, who on the podcast would you trust most to make the best Thanksgiving meal? Again, I wish Kyle was here for this one. Wish Graham was around for this one. Graham's still a friend of the podcast. Hates stuffing. Kyle ridiculed him for that. Who do we trust most to make the best Thanksgiving meal?
You, and then probably Sam, and then me.
I appreciate it.
Just solely off the podcast, or everybody within Owl Scoop?
Everybody within Owl Scoop.
Tom McNudo.
Yeah. Probably Tom.
Tom McNudo.
I would say podcast-wise, on who's on right now, you, Sam, and then me. I'm not, by all means, not great in the kitchen. I can get by to do the basic things, but
I'm a weapon in the kitchen. I'm different. I'm crazy.
We
Have you cooked a bird before, though, Sam?
should cut that as a drop and just like right after Brandon McManus. Hi, this is Brandon McManus, Super Bowl champion. You're listening to the Scoop.
You should use that as like
I'm a weapon in the kitchen. I'm different.
We should use that as like a piece on social media. Just happy Thanksgiving from our family, from our Al Scoop family to yours, and then it's just a voice recording of Sam Cone. I'm a weapon in the kitchen.
Why are you a weapon in the kitchen, Sam? What makes you so confident in your things?
Yeah, you can't just like say that and not describe.
There's no snark intended there, although there might be like, I mean, I love you. Like I believe in you. You're both very smart human beings. But why such a strong take on you are a weapon in the kitchen?
I don't have a great explanation. It's confidence is what breeds good food.
And even though you said I have zero role in any sort of Thanksgiving preparation, I just show up and stay out of you earlier, did you not say I stay out of the kitchen? Well, you're a weapon in the kitchen.
Correct. For Thanksgiving, I generally do. But Friendsgiving, well, I mean, it's mashed potatoes, but I'm making mashed potatoes for Friendsgiving this year. And then it's just me and my parents. So I'll probably have to step up to the plate in some way or another to help make Thanksgiving meal this year. But so I have no experience making Thanksgiving meals. But other than that,
so you're going to step up and be like a clutch replacement? I
feel like I can step up and knock it down from 35 feet on Thanksgiving.
So are you the Matt Duncan of this year's Thanksgiving?
That's exactly right.
I have confidence in my abilities. I have never cooked my own turkey from start to finish. I have observed my mom. I know this sounds incredibly biased. My wife is an amazing cook. Like, I'm kind of bummed out that we're not hosting this year, although it's a ton of work. I've observed her. I think it's fun to get up in the morning, like early in the morning, and like just gut the turkey, stuff it. I can't do it as well as she can. I can't do stuffing as well as my mother-in-law can or my mom, but pretty good with other stuff. I think
I want to try. I want to try to make a turkey. I feel like I want to try.
I feel like Thanksgiving is not the correct holiday to just like should be like, yeah,
to give it a shot.
To give it a shot.
I'm not nearly as good at making a turkey, I would say, as like making like meatballs or other Italian food, but it's a lot of work, but it's fun. So again, maybe we'll get Kyle's response. Again, this is going to be our last scoop before the Thanksgiving, so we'll talk to you guys in a couple of weeks, but maybe we'll do a Thanksgiving wrap up, a Thanksgiving review, an instant analysis of Thanksgiving. What if we hopped on a podcast and had to explain to all our families, like, we're going to record this instant analysis that like 5 to 7 people might listen to of Thanksgiving, and it's just Kyle.
Right after we eat.
Yeah.
It just sounds of you eating in the background.
Or Graham with some ridiculous, just troll-like take about Thanksgiving.
Possibly. Can you imagine how plain his plate probably looks on Thanksgiving?
We love him. We wrap our arms around Graham Foley. He's full of potential as a human being. He's got a good heart, but yeah, his food takes leave a lot to be desired. I'm gonna be in Downingtown for Thanksgiving. I'll be in his midst.
Neck of the woods.
Yes. So we'll see. But anyway, we're going to wrap things up here for now. Again, thank you to Brendan Barry for joining us. Thank you to all of you for listening to this episode. We hope that you sincerely have the most wonderful holiday with your friends and family, however you're spending it. Please be safe, be happy, healthy. Very thankful to all of you for listening. Very thankful to the two Sams here for all the great work they do, and for Kyle and Graham and Tom and anyone who's ever been on the Scoop before. Hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday, and we will talk to you in a couple weeks.